Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Procrastinator's Pit Stop. We have another amazing guest for you today. We have with us Rhonda Parmer. Rhonda is a former associate superintendent and national distinguished principal with over 3 decades of leadership experience in public education, and she now empowers executives to build confidence, avoid burnout, and achieve their goals through her proven ease strategies. By guiding them on a journey of self discovery and fostering clarity, she helps leaders create world class teams while maintaining a healthy work life balance. Rhonda, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you very much, Chris. It's an honor to be here. Excited.
Oh, well, we're excited to have you here. We have a lot to dig into, but before we get to that, as is customary in the show, we do have a little bit of an icebreaker. And the question for you today is, which cartoon character do you resonate with the most, and why?
Okay. First of all, I love cartoons, so this is pretty tough. Let me narrow this down real quick to Cars 3, Cruz Ramirez. So she's the coach for our friend Lightning. And then some find out through all of her coaching, she ends up having a little bit of a competitive streak herself. So there you go. Cruz.
I like that one. I think that's the first time that's been brought up and mentioned. I like that. So, and again, we have a lot of good things we want to cover today. But just before we dive into it, what is procrastination to you? How do you define it? And what does it mean to you personally?
Okay. Unfortunately, I've had lots of experience with procrastination. So that kind of has guided my whole journey through a career as a student, a career as a teacher, an administrator, and then ultimately building this company. Procrastination takes on you see many signs of it, of course, but when you get down to the root, for me, it seems like it's a confidence issue. So if I go back to a classroom setting, some students, even those who are very intelligent, students who are gifted, have a high tendency to procrastinate, and it's a fear. It's a confidence issue. They would rather not try at all than to try and be wrong or fail. And then those who are struggling for different reasons, maybe it's not that they're gifted or whatever, they either want to play or they're working on something else. They don't know how to manage their time. They just need some skills. And so it still comes back to their confidence and ability to map out to their time and plan. And so those kinds of things are rarely taught in school. So then we have a whole load of adults who continue to struggle with that skill. So what we find is a lot of times when we're coaching people, they don't get right down to that root immediately. It takes several sessions of questioning and really self-reflection and some discovery to find that out. And so that's one of the reasons that I want to continue to coach, because I want to help people accelerate that skill, put it in place before it starts to destroy them. And with executives, we find that they have done an amazing job in whatever career level they've taken. They're possibly a great leader. They understand processes, but there's still something that is either in their confidence house or their planning house that they let get out of balance. So I look at it from a balance standpoint and a skills base, how to fix this problem.
Excellent. I like that. Thanks you for breaking that down. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey? You know, how did you start down this path, and how did you get to where you are today?
Okay, so what I'm talking about today is super clear to me now after 32 years. But as a beginning teacher, even a beginning administrator, I knew I had to outwork people because I knew I had procrastination issues. And, when you're a teacher or in any career, when you have reports due or meetings coming up and you're not prepared, there's that will what I call that brings what I call a black eye. And sometimes a black eye will heal, but other times it won't. And so thankfully I learned in high school that it does cause a black eye, so that I knew in college and beyond, okay, I got to work extra hard to make sure this doesn't happen. I cannot afford any black eyes when I'm working for money and trying to keep a job. So that led to overworking. Procrastination turned into perfectionism and trying to, okay, I have this 3-3-3 rule that I use as a tool. So if something's when you're in college, you get your syllabus, you look at the whole thing. You really only have 3.5 or so months. Well, my rule was I have to look 3 months ahead. So in a college class, that's the end of the semester. So 3 months ahead, what am I going to have to do? What do I have to do to make sure that's done? Then 3 weeks ahead, 3 weeks ahead before this thing is due, what will I have to do? 3 days ahead, 3 hours ahead. So that helped me back up and get things done. But then like I said, it turned into perfectionism. So in college, and mind you, I got my undergraduate, did my master's and my doctorate all at University of Houston. And I had that same bad habit of overdoing and overdoing and overdoing and overdoing. So as a result of my knowledge of procrastination, to overcome it, I overworked. So I got completely out of balance the other way. And that led to a destruction of many relationships, many friendships, lifelong friends that I still have, thankfully, because I was able to recover. But so many years of not seeing my friends, only talking to them once or twice in the year. I met my husband in college and my undergraduate. So all through those 12 years of college and my career, he suffered because he was on the back burner. I had to be perfect in all these things to overcome procrastination. And my husband is very wise. He would be my little guide back here trying to, speak the words of wisdom and the voice of reason. And I'm ashamed to say, but it probably took me 20 years to really listen to him and finally understand what he was talking about and be able to come up with methods. So fast forward, now I've been a teacher, an assistant principal, a coach in schools, and now I have my first job as a principal. And interestingly enough, every bit of advice that I was getting was slow down, don't try to change anything, don't overwork people, don't put too high demands on people. And I was thinking, why are people telling me this? This is what we have to do. We're teaching children. This is the wave of the future. We've got to make sure everybody's ready to go. And plus, I don't overwork, so I was still kind of blind to that. Even though, like I said, what I'm talking about now, very clearly, I did not understand that. And this may sound weird, Chris, but my first year as a principal, I got really, really sick, and I had to slow down, had to limit my hours, and I had to rely on other people. Simon Sinek tells us, he says there's 5 really great things that'll keep you successful. But the one that resonated with me the most was receive help when people try to give it to you. That means you didn't even ask. They just saw you and sensed you needed help. They stuck out their hand and tried to pull you up. Take their hand, regardless of what you think you're doing. That's so hard because you have to put your pride down and say, no, I got this. No, they're reaching their hand out because you need it. So the one is receive help when you didn't even ask. And the second one is ask. Ask for help. And especially now, since COVID, relationships and well-being have become so much at the forefront that people are looking out for each other more. And if you just say you need help, they're going to help you. You'd be shocked at how many people love you and want to come to your aid. So that's what happened to me. And that was 20 years ago now. I can't believe it. That was 20 years ago. And so my first year as principal, I didn't get to set the world on fire. Oh, I'm in on a stick now. I'm here. We're going to do this. That illness, looking back, was a blessing, and it taught me this valuable lesson. And it gauged the rest of my career in how I would mentor new principals. And then I became an associate superintendent. I still supervise principals for the last 12 years. And that lesson, if anything else came out of that, at least I could help people with that. Then I retired, and I spent about 3 months just kind of spinning my wheels. What am I going to do? I mean, yeah, I can retire, but I still have a lot to give. And I thought back to that same lesson. And so that's what's inspired me to keep talking and keep meeting people and help them save their relationship, save themselves, and realize that what they're thinking is a false program. And there's a way to fix that without having to get sick.
Well, certainly an amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing that. Besides, it sounds like that, when you had to slow down, you finally had a lot of chance for reflection. I know that many of us feel like, we have to be on the go 100% of the time to feel, quote unquote productive. But what are some of the ways that you tackle that? Because, I find there's two extremes with CEOs personally. the guy that's always out on the golf course, like literally every single day. But then there's the other CEO who's got his hands and his fingers in every single department, and he's probably working harder than everybody else on the team. So how do you tackle
Unfortunately, those that are on the golf course, I mean, they have mastered the skill of letting people do their work, get their own jobs done. But they've also dumped their job on their folks. Those are not the kind of people who ask for help. And those are the people that others resent, though, to a certain extent. Like, hey, I know you've got this thing going on, but anyway, different time, different story for a different time. Those who are either micromanagers or they're overcommitted, it's a story they have in their head. So we look at the science of the brain and what shapes our behavior. One of the things I do in my program is I administer the DISC assessment, and I'm a certified Maxwell DISC behavior analysis. And what we find with everybody is your behavior is shaped a third by your heredity, your genes. That's just built in. Another third is by your experiences from age 10 up. So even now, different things we explore and experience now will shape our behaviors. And then another third is what was modeled to you between, birth and about age 12. And maybe it wasn't directly modeled, but it was sayings you heard, like money doesn't grow on trees, or you need to get a job, or, sound advice and things that keep us grounded. But in some cases, kept us too grounded. Like, you're not going to get any money unless you earn it, and different things that subtly have changed the way you act. So when I coach through with people, those are the kinds of questions I ask, not what kind of things did you hear when you were little, but I'll ask a question like, what would it look like if you didn't go to 3 meetings today? And just sit and have them really almost like, okay, chess. If I go this way, these are the 2 things that I have. If I go this way, these are the 2 things. And it just slowly gets them to realize that not only do they not have to do everything, they can't. And the folks that they work with are going to be a lot more empowered and engaged when they don't. So I'm going to use an example of, let's say if I worked with this guy, Robert, who was the head of a bank, 200 employees, lots of departments, and he thought he had to go to every single meeting. He was worn out. But what made him call me is his wife and daughters. So one of the signs I have a quiz that says, can you even recognize the signs of being no? We just had a loud noise over here. Sorry about that. Okay. Anyway, one of the signs on this questionnaire is, do you hear from your family that they don't see you enough? Anyway, that's what made him call. His wife and 2 daughters were constantly saying, we miss you. We don't even get to talk to you. Even when he was at home, they would have family dinner time, but he would have his phone right there. So, hey girls, how's it go? How's your day today? And then he'd never look up, never heard what they said. So that's just taking that quiz made him go, wow, that is something that's happening. But anyway, I say that to say because of the pressures or the idea or this programming in our head that changes our behavior, that if you're the CEO, you're the one that's responsible and you're the one that has to do everything, and you have to sacrifice your time, and you have to, lead by example. And people misinterpret what those things mean. Lead by example does not mean you have to do every single task. I would like us to pay our CEO to do the things that no one else can do. That means that if there are other people who can do certain things, he needs to effectively delegate to those folks so that he can focus on the thing that no one else can do. Part of the training.
You raise an interesting point too. And, it reminds me of that saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together. And I have to wonder, I've run into this myself. And I wondered your take on it. I've run into many CEOs that say, well, sure, other people can do it, but not as good as me. Or, I know that if I sign this out, it's going to get done in a week, but if I do it, I can get it knocked out in 10 minutes. And they do that. So
yes, I hear those comments all the time. So if you want it done right, do it yourself. we have to negate all of those things. So let's go with the one that says, I can get this done in 10 minutes, or I can give it to them and it's going to be done in a week. To them, I say, how are you building capacity in your team? And I just let them sit there for a minute. Because if you're doing everything that they could be doing, albeit take a week longer or whatever, then you're robbing them of their learning and you're robbing them of their potential future. You hire people on your team to complement you and help you. The ones who just hire a body, which fill it, okay, let's go with the bank example. Okay, they were a great teller. Now they could be the director of all the tellers. You have to build capacity in that person. Just because you're a great teller doesn't mean you're going to be a great manager of the tellers. They can tell what they used to do that made them great, but you still have to manage people and build relationships and identify burnout or procrastination or perfectionism and coach them. So I'm going to just go back to the school example. What happens in schools, and trust me, I love public education. I'm a big proponent, but what happens is great teachers get promoted to assistant principals. Great assistant principals get promoted to principals, and great principals get promoted to associate superintendent. Great associate superintendents get promoted up. So it's a natural chain, just like in any other industry. But just because this is what another thing Simon Sinek says, what got you here, what made you great there will not help you here. You're in a whole new role, and that got you here, but that's over. Go from an assistant principal to a principal. An assistant principal is king or queen of tasks. They used to say, pardon my language, but they used to say bikes, books, and butts. Okay. But as the principal, that is completely changed. Your role has gone from tasks and linear thinking to thoughts, ideas, visions, and global thinking. And the interview process and the training that a principal would give an assistant principal is what would help us be able to pick a great principal. But what got you to where you are is not what gets you to the next level. You have to almost live into that next level and then get there, like the chicken and the egg, right? But the folks who say those kind of things, I just help them try to come up with the opposite. Say the opposite. Okay, if you want something done right, do it yourself. Really? Somebody asked you to do something. What if they would have said that?
Well, that's fair. Because I guess you would have no forward advancement that way, right? So you just have to realize. And one of the things too is that, again, busy does not equal productive. We know that.
There are many people addicted to busy, and I am still a recovering busy addict. So, I mean, that is so true. And it's kind of like you said, the people who are running around doing everything, oh, I've got to do that. And then they have this overwhelm. Oh, I'm so overwhelmed. They just keep giving me more and more work. No, you're taking more and more work. And, my program is called the Confidence Accelerator. Someone who acts like that, they either have a lack of confidence in themselves or a lack of confidence in their team. And if they're the executive, it's up to them to train their teams. And so in the end, it's their fault. They're not doing it right. And so I hate to use the word fault, but that's the result of their lack of confidence in their team. So through my program, I mentioned the DISC assessment. An executive can choose to take the assessment themselves. It takes 7 minutes. And they can also ask their closest administrative team to also take it from their own perspectives. And then we have a good team view, a team report. What are the strengths per member of the team? Or the executive can choose to take the DISC themselves and then have a 360 view. So where the other members of the team would take it on the perspective of the leader. So that would, for example, you mentioned the one that was always out on the golf course. Not that those kind of folks are the ones asking for help, but if they were, then that reality would show up in the 360 because it's anonymous. We can do some different things to make sure it's truly anonymous because there is a question about what role you have. And so if it's a small organization, it's pretty clear when you say what role, you can identify who said it. So, if it's a small organization, we could remove that question, but it just helps bring to light. So you have your self-image and self-perception, and then how are others viewing you? And are you reflective enough to consider that other people might be viewing you different than how you view yourself? And that leads me to this comment. I cannot remember where I heard it, maybe John Maxwell or someone there, but he says, we judge others by their actions. That's all we can see, how they act. But we judge ourselves by our intentions. We know what we meant. We know what we hoped we were going to accomplish, but it didn't act out in the right way, or maybe it did. But we know our own intentions. We cannot tell the intentions of others. We only see how they act, and that makes us make an assumption of their intentions. Which leads me to a funny story, if you have a minute. Several years ago, we had a couple of friends, and the wife and husband got along great, but they were not afraid to, in public, gnaw on each other. And sometimes to the point where it made us embarrassed. After they left, I told my husband, look, I love going back and forth with you, but let's not do that in front of people. You know how that made me feel about them? I don't want anybody to feel that way about us. And he said, well, if you do that to me in front of people, I'm just going to have to match. I'm going to have to equally match what I feel you've given to me. And I said, well, then I'm going to have to go over and above, because you're going to be misunderstanding. And then it's going to even be bigger. We just kind of went back and forth, but nobody was around. But it's true. If you don't know their intentions and you assume their intentions, it changes the way you act. So understanding and having that time for reflection to see how people might really view you, having that knowledge gives you a chance to reflect and think about any changes you may want to take.
I really like that. We judge others by actions, we judge ourselves by our intentions. Kind of goes back into sort of that understanding, right? And one of the things that I wanted to ask you too is that you mentioned before, relationships are so integral and so important to a team. So what are some ways that, maybe a smaller organization can start building those teams or building that trust without going on those? Because one of the excuses I heard was, oh, we can't spend $20,000 on a team retreat.
Right. Right. I love retreat. I love me some retreats, but there's a lot of people who hate them or they can't afford them. And so I'll just give you an example of what I've seen a lot of people do. And they call it a retreat, but it's not really a retreat from their physical location. It's a retreat from work. And so they're still at work, but they go to a different place in the building where maybe they don't normally meet. And instead of having a meeting with agenda of things that have to get done, the agenda is ways to get to know you. And I'm not talking about putting, paper plates on the floor and having to carry someone over the paper plates or anything like that. It's truly, it'll pose a question, like, it could even be work related. Like if we were going to have a crisis here, if there was some kind of crisis here, what kinds of things would we do? Or if this kind of crisis happened, how would you feel? Let's just say there's a fire in our building. There's a fire in our building. What's our plan first? And then how do you feel? Are you the kind who is calm under pressure? Are you the kind that needs some guiding hands because you're kind of freaking out internally? You can put a situation where you can get to learn people a little bit differently. One thing that I used to love to do, and I don't know where I got this idea, maybe from Capturing Kids' Hearts. That's a program out of Central Texas, but it said, give everybody a sheet of paper at the beginning of the year, whenever you consider your beginning of the year, mostly January, and have them fill out favorites. What's your favorite? Well, first of all, personal information. Who are you? Who's your spouse or kids, pets, that kind of thing. And then 30 favorites. What's your favorite magazine, your favorite candy bar, your favorite dinner, your favorite restaurant, your favorite vacation, blah, blah, blah. All the way down, different things. And then everybody turns that in. Back in the day, it was a sheet of paper. Now it would be electronic, okay? But it turned that in somehow where not only first of all, when people just started doing it, only the leader had it. And the leader would, oh, well, okay, well, it's Rhonda's birthday. She likes a Kit Kat and Dr. Pepper. Here you go. Happy birthday. And you got them something nice. Well, that was kind of like hoarding the information. We realized, hey, let's put that out in a public. This is going to be public. And so now anybody can look at this. So anybody can find out anybody's birthday or whatever they put on there. And everybody knew ahead of time when their anniversary is, what their kids' names were, how old were they, are they in school, are they about to graduate, do they have pets, What do they love? Coffee or whatever. And then throughout the year, not just birthday and anniversary, but you can have, and this may sound really schoolish, like elementary or even junior high school team building, but it's a way to get to know people. And so you have secret Santas, or they do this little thing for every season, like I got you or something, and they give them one little present a day for a couple of days or a week or whatever, and it's supposed to be secret, and then it reveals. But the thing is, you just got to know somebody on a different level. Here's another one. I saw this at a bank where they had a picture of all these kids up on like a bulletin board near their break room. And I said, "What is this?" And they said, "That's all of us when we were kids." And that had a number by it. And they said at the end of the week, we're supposed to turn in, who we think is who. So, I mean, just doing little things like that, that's not a huge retreat. But now you get to see what your coworker looked like when they were in the third grade, and then that's going to spark a story. Oh, that picture when I was in third grade, that was right after I had a bike accident. I was missing my tooth, my toe got stuck in the bike or whatever. So you're just setting up a situation to allow different kinds of conversations besides just, hey, Chris, is that report going to be ready by Friday? You need any help? I'll send Jack over there if you need some help. If not, let's, make sure I get it. Just slow down and get to know people as a human being. And I mean, you did this icebreaker. You could do something very similar to that at the beginning of every meeting. Not that you have a whole bunch of meetings, but, or even, you're going to put out an employee newsletter or have a spotlight on a bulletin board somewhere and just say, hey, Chris identifies with Bugs Bunny. I don't know. I don't know. I never did get to ask you who your character was, but something like that to change the conversation slightly from work. Now, I'll be honest with you. I have another friend who says, no way, you're at work. We do expect them to be out of balance. I'm sorry. They're head executives. They are in charge and they got to make sure all this stuff is done. And to them, I say, you're going to have a lonely life. Work is critical. We work, we hopefully find something in our calling, and we're adding to the benefit of a lot of people. We're serving others. We're solving a problem in our community, or we're creating something for the future. But if that is all your life is, you're going to be lonely. Even if you have a family, you're going to be lonely. And I realized that, and I had to make significant changes to make sure I kept my family and my friends.
Excellent. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Just stepping back into like the team building, you mentioned there for a second, that they have to make sure that everything gets done. That brings up another question I have for you, because statistics are, and again, I don't know where these numbers come from. I mean, they say that like 72% of statistics are made up on the spot or something. But somebody did tell me that 66.8 or something like that, I have to go back and look, of all new managers fail within a year because they're not taught how to manage people. And one of the big things with that, I think, actually, I'd like to ask you about too, is boundaries in the workplace, because boundaries can be pretty difficult, especially if you've been promoted up. Well, not only that, but do leaders, do they cry when the Janet's cat dies? Oh, I would, but you're not supposed to do that. Don't do it. You're the executive. You can't do that. Where do you stand?
Well, I may be a little bit of an enigma, I guess, because in my head, I would say, yeah, I'll never cry on a cat. I never cry on a cat. Come on, man, get into work and get here. But then when they're telling me, when I'm looking her in the face and she's telling me about her cat, I would be bawling. And so I'm okay with that. I mean, it's real, I mean, it'd be bawling, blubbering, but you're going to see a little tear, not because I care about the cat, but because I care about Janet or whoever. And she's hurting, and it's impacting her productivity and her mental state. Just, that's tough. And so showing a shot of empathy, one of my friends taught me this, because I say to myself, when I see myself, this is what I was talking about before on the, how do you see yourself and how do others see you? I say, I'm not very sensitive to that. I say, okay, your cat died. I'm sorry. Let's get back to work. But when others see me and they tell me, no, you're super sensitive. You give them time. You probably give them way too much more time than they deserve, need, or whatever. So that's what I'm saying. I'm an enigma, but A friend of mine taught me just with someone that she supervised, dog passed away. When that happened and she could see what an impact it made on her. I just got a note that my battery's running low. But anyway, when she saw the impact, she went ahead and bought this book about the dog crossing over the rainbow to the other side. And while she did the one for that person, she went ahead and bought 100 more books. And she said, this happens all the time. I want to be ready. And just the act of giving them a book that helps them know that there's a lot more people who feel the same way about this certain situation, and that the person took the time. They don't know she bought those 100 books and she already had them ready to go. They know she cared about them to give them a book, write a little inscription, use the pet's name or dog's name, and take time to care about the person. So I always go back and forth with, do I care too much or do I not care enough? And if I go by what others tell me, I feel I'm pretty balanced, that I do care and show care and let people know I care. But in my head, I might be on a dichotomous saying, this is not natural to me. I'm having to force myself to do this. Let's get back to work. But it's not helpful to be that way. And I understand through my own experiences and through my husband's coaching me, nothing is more important. This report that I'm waiting on for Friday, hey, if I get it late Friday or even Monday morning, we'll still be okay. As long as this person, now I've helped this person get through their sadness and let them know they're not alone. They're going to be a loyal employee from now on. Don't sacrifice, years of loyalty for minutes of productivity. I just made that up on the spot.
No, and I like that. Don't negate all those years of loyalty with 5 minutes of productivity, right?
Yeah, and going back to your question about boundaries, you mentioned, and thank you for mentioning that I'm in the middle of writing a book. I'm prodding myself, but it ease into leadership. And I've taken the research from all these leadership gurus, you name them, they're out there, and they all tell us what we should do. Just like Simon Sinek said, receive the help, ask for help. So I've taken all those great advices of what to do and turned them into little templates of how to do it. So you mentioned setting boundaries at work. We went down the path of showing emotion and that kind of thing, but there's another one that I like to talk about, and that is the boundaries of your personal time. If we're looking at balance and have a great leader learning the skill of balance, then they need to set a boundary for personal time. And one of the greatest things I've seen people do recently is stop sending emails after closing time. And I try to tell people, I coach them and show them the tools in the email settings that say, hey, you can keep email until midnight, but put a delivery on them. So then the next morning, then one person came and said, yeah, well, I got better at doing that, but now everybody's griping because they're getting 100 emails right at 8 o'clock. And I said, okay, well, you're still out of balance, but hey, you're better. At least you're not disturbing them. So living that way, modeling it and expecting it from others, you're setting that boundary that, hey, we're going to work. We're going to give it our all during these hours that we're working. And then we're going to take time for ourselves and our friends and our family and our hobbies, our bodies, and that kind of thing. So just email is one. And then the other one is vacation. I worked with a lady who, she ran a small art museum. She hadn't been on vacation in 3 years. And she had, husband and children at home, and same thing. The husband joked with her and said, hey, I see you more on the news than I see you at home. Come on, man, you're out of balance here. And she had a really tough time because a small team and she being paid the most, that's another mindset of, well, I get the most money, I need to do the most work. And that's true to a certain extent, but doesn't mean you have to do everything. And it doesn't mean you have to do all of a certain type of work. You're paid that much because you're the visionary leader and you're the one leading them into the future, and you're the one managing and supervising and checking up on everything, not doing everything. So that's a mind shift. But anyway, getting a person to take a vacation, tough. And then the last one, just thinking about boundaries. There are some who say, you're not going to get any personal phone calls at work. No personal phone calls. Well, that's also a little bit out of touch because we live in a world now where everybody's got their work phone, cell phone, personal phone, computer, instant messaging. I mean, come on, let's be real. Instead of trying to ban all personal communication at work and then be a task manager and a gotcha queen or king, set the rule for it. Hey, everybody work real hard and then take your breaks, take your minutes and then get back to work. Don't abuse it and we'll move on from there. And when you treat people like the humans in the world that we live and understand that and people see you and understanding that and being real, that just adds to that loyalty factor. And that's part of what builds your culture. There are so many things we could talk about in terms of work culture and loyalty and employee retention and engagement levels that it all does boil down to trusting your people, believing in them, even if they don't believe in themselves, believing in them until they believe in themselves and, and trusting them until they give you a reason not to. Now there'll be people who say, no, 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 you can't, you're going to get burned. Well, what's the pro and con in that? And we talk about those kind of things. I'll give you one example. Go back to when you're a little kid in school, elementary, fourth or fifth grade, or maybe third, fourth, or fifth. The little longitudinal study of third through fifth grade. Third grade, you had a great teacher. He or she taught you so many things. You remember liking school, and you also remember going out to the playground. Fourth grade, you remember you got better at math, but you never went outside. And then fifth grade, now you're in fifth grade, and which teacher do you like best? And where did you think you learned the most? And there are psychological factors that have to do with play and balance and breaks. Now, as adults, we're setting our watches. Hey, set an alarm for 45 minutes so I can stand up, or set an alarm for 2 hours so I can go get a snack. Or those are the kinds of things that we do. And it's related back to when you were a child. We can, in schools, if we could get everybody to just take the kids out for 5 minutes, when they get back, they're going to be so much more productive, cut down on all kinds of discipline problems and disrespect, build that loving relationship. They're going to like you more. I mean, I'm just using that as an example, but same thing with adults. Trust them, give them breaks, let them have some autonomy. And if you don't trust them, then train them until you trust them. And that's where I get back to it all boils down to confidence in yourself or others.
I like that. I like that example with the kids. I remember some times in fifth grade and sixth grade, but the only thing that really sticks out of my mind, it's not even about if they were good teachers or not. It's about my sixth grade teacher, Mr. Dibsdale. Yeah. You're probably retired by now. Don't worry about it. He was sitting there. We'd had a water balloon fight at the school or something, and it wasn't allowed. And the only thing I remember out of that entire year was him telling us that we'd get hemorrhoids if we sat in wet clothes.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, it's
Isn't it funny how things like that are just imprinted? You'll never forget that.
No, I will never forget that. I'd also share the one that happened in fifth grade, but that's not really appropriate for the air because it was a different time back then, right? Teachers could get away with more. So there's that. Wanted to go back and ask you about the book as well. They say that having a book is about 92% procrastination and 8% actually doing it. How true is that for you? So, Rhonda, just swinging back to, you kind of glazed over it, and quite a big accomplishment. You're writing a book, and I know it's been done to death, but I always ask this question. So they say when writing a book, it's 98% procrastination and 2% actually doing it. How true is that for you, do you think?
For me, it might be 99.9. I mean, it's so true, Chris, that, we have these ideas to share, and we know it's just like a podcast, it's just like talking. If you could just write the way you spoke and be done with it, you'd be fine. But we know our credibility is at stake. So how are we going to back it up with research, and how are we going to organize this so it makes sense to someone who knows nothing about it? And how are we going to, really make it contribute to the depth of literature, especially in this area, because it's leadership. I mean, you go on Amazon and look at all the leadership books, it's pages and pages and pages. So then you have to overcome this syndrome, I can't even remember it right now, but it's that, imposter syndrome. So, golly, I'm going to be up against Maxwell and Cynic and all these people. You just have to shut up and do it. And so I have a technique It's another human being. And it is somebody with the publishing company. And she said, I will leave you alone or bug you as much as you want. And I said, I want you to bug me every day. Because if I'm not working on it every day, I could string it out 2 years. And then what good is that? This thing needs to be done quickly. I'd love to say a time period, but then I don't want it to be recorded and then not sticking to it. But procrastination is real, and it does have to do with so many psychological factors. And so we just have to realize that and know it's true about everybody to some degree, and then come up with a technique to overcome it. So another technique I'd use to overcome it is I wanted to say I'm a published author, and I am, of children's books. So I said, well, if I'm going to write a book, I can at least get this one out. It's 32 pages. It's about, 1,500 words and beautiful pictures, but I'm an author. So that gave me a little bit of confidence to say, okay, you did it once with a picture book and a little story. You tied it into leadership. You got a Bible verse in there. You're making your family happy because it's about y'all's dog. Now get off your butt and do the other one. It's what you do every day. So get after it. So hopefully that'll work. I believe it will.
I like that, and we'll keep tabs on that, and when it comes out, we'll update the show notes to so you can come back to this episode someday and get that link to that book as well.
I'd love to.
Well, Rhonda, it has been a real pleasure today. We are coming up pretty close to the time. Do you think that there's anything that I should have asked but didn't ask, or anything that we should have covered but we didn't cover today?
Well, I would just like to say that, I truly believe in people. I have believed in people and not even knowing what I was doing all the way in elementary. When we would have someone move in who didn't know English, I would teach them English, use flashcards and teach them English. And I mean, I didn't teach them, everything in all the academic areas, but I taught them conversational English. And I just believe that when people know there's a problem and know there's tools to tackle it, that they can and will. And so, I've mentioned my program. It is a 90-day confidence accelerator. I give you 90 days. It doesn't take 90 days. I give you 90 days in case there are other things in life that come up. But it truly is based on just becoming aware of what's the challenge, and then looking at tools on how to do that, how to fix them. Not just knowing you need to fix them. That's step one. Then how do you do it? And this isn't giving you a bunch more homework and a lot of tasks to go do. It's looking at your normal routine at work and helping you overcome those challenges with your everyday work. So I'd love to see anybody who's in that spot. I believe I'm here for a reason. I met you for a reason, and there are people listening for a reason. And if they resonate with anything I've said, I would invite them to give me a call. Check out.
I definitely like that. Let me put that up on the screen actually, so that we can
Thank you.
see that for them. And so this is the information for that confidence accelerator. And just to ask, what is the best way for people to reach out to you?
If they do scan that code, and I know you're going to put a website or put the link up, that QR code goes to a very quick landing page that just reminds you of what this program is. And it gives you a chance to get on my calendar, set an appointment. They can also look at my regular website now, just to give a little preview. My website has been built out for about a year. And remember, my whole career was in education. So when I first started this organization, all we did was work with principals and district administrators. But over the last 6 months, we have begun working with anyone. We found out, hey, this isn't just a school problem. This is everywhere. This is leadership. This is human nature. And so we really invite executives from every field. And maybe you're not paid at the executive level yet, but remember I talked about the chicken and the egg, what comes first. You need to live into those. So if you're looking for advancement or promotion, or even to just get noticed, this also is a program for you.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And not to worry. We are going to put some of that information in the website, and as well in the show notes as well, so you don't have to grab a pen and paper or worry about taking that picture. And once again, Rhonda, just thank you so much for being on the show. It's an absolute pleasure to have you. And to all our listeners, thank you for tuning in once again. And just remember, if you can't find that inspiration or motivation for yourself today, maybe just go out and try to be that motivation, inspiration for someone else. And we'll see you again next time.